Thank you everyone for coming. I can't believe it's already been 6 weeks. Jeez. And as always, it is an honor for me to be here and humbly approach this. That you could be anywhere else, and you chose to be here, and that's great. Then I want our time to be useful together and productive. And so if you've been here over the arc of the time, we started with personal COVID care, how we can take care of ourselves, and then how that affects the community, and that kind of snowballed into how can we understand what's going on that is presenting itself in this way in our communities, and we keep adding tools and learning more and more about it. And so now 6 weeks later, we are rolling, and we are in slide, I don't know, looks like 60 some out of 400. So we'll just go until we run out of slides. How's that sound? And then I'll make up some stuff, maybe tell knock jokes or something. Okay, so we talked last time about the transmission of how trauma goes from generation to generation. We've talked a lot about sociology and what culture looks like, and last time we talked about biology. We talked about the epigenetics, the environmental influence on gene activation, and the scarring of the DNA and how that can be passed down. But remember, which I always want to emphasize even more, that the strength was passed down as well. So our kids at home, theoretically at least, are the strongest native children that have ever lived. My 3 chocolate kids at home, you never guessed it by looking at them right now as they're watching SpongeBob and eating popcorn, but they are the strongest native kids that have ever been genetically. And so my job to help them lean into that is to challenge them and nurture them and to bring them along and create good scaffolding around them that helps that strength pop within them. So they know, they believe it, they know that it's true. And this can happen in our communities. And that is why I do what I do. Man, I'm so excited right now. Whew. Okay. So there's things that on the flip side of that, though, because I always like to have strength-based stuff, but I also want to know what is occurring. We talked a lot about the sociology and even the biology, but some of the psychology of how trauma gets transferred from one generation to the next, and lack of nurturing. Maybe you saw this in your own homes, and this is long-standing as far as boarding schools go, and colonization goes. That men were beaten down, women were raped and beaten, and so it was hard to connect. It became hard to connect. And then the putting in of boarding schools there was a void. There was a black hole of nurturing. It didn't exist for those kids for many of the kids in residential schools. And that nurturing is one of the key components of making stress-hardy children, bringing children along in strong ways, nurturing. And I want us to get comfortable saying that word, because when I work with men, and I talk about that word nurturing, they all kind of giggle, like nurturing. But go back generationally, go back several generations, and that's who we were, that's what we did. Particularly men, we helped bring kids along. We taught them how to fish, how to hunt, how to plant. They were always with men because they learned the role. That is nurturing. And when that is taken away, the child's brain doesn't know how to recover from that. Because a child, we always looked vertically. Remember, we've talked about this previously. Our children look vertically for how they should be in any given moment. And if there's not a parent there, they have to look horizontally, and the other kids are struggling just as much as they are. So they don't have they don't have a positive feedback loop. And so this lack of nurturing then feeds into this understanding of self. Who am I? What am I about? And kids, they look to the parent to see, well, is this a valid thought? Is what I'm thinking right now, true? Is it a good, valid thought? And if they're not getting that, they don't know how to shape that. So think about your own kids. I pick my kids up from school and like Parks or Jack, and Jack will say something like, "Dad, I got a 90 on my math test." And I'll turn around, not when I'm driving, but also like we're still in the parking lot. I'll turn around and I'll look at him and I'll say, "That's great, Jack. You must have tried really hard. You must have studied really hard on that bad boy. Awesome. Way to represent." And I look him right in the eye. So his brain, not just consciously, but his brain says, so this is a valid thought. Me working hard leads to something. And I try not to say, "You must be really smart," because I don't want his brain thinking, "Well, next time if I get a C, does that make me dumb?" So we always want to focus on the effort. To bring them along, we focus on trying hard, helping the community, working with each other. We want them to know that those are valid things and look them right in the eye. Because if you're on your phone and you say, "Okay, honey, okay," like that, while you're on your phone, they're not getting any feedback from you. So they're not even sure if that is a valid statement. So part of what we do in our community start making hardy-proof, stress-proof kids is looking at them, engaging and attuning. Remember that from last time? So within this how this trauma is getting passed down, we have distant parenting. And I've said this before, parenting, and if you're on here, you're already down. You're already into it. That you know that parenting the next generation is a powerful thing that reverberates. It's going to affect your grandkids. It's going to affect your great grandkids. It's going to reverberate. So connected parenting, attuned parenting. That doesn't mean I spoil my kids, but I don't mind spoiling my kids with my time. If I have time, I will give it to my kids. I don't consider that spoiling them. I consider that creating scaffolding and being attuned with them. I don't buy them a lot of stuff. I'm not that into stuff, and I don't want them to be that into stuff. But I will give them my time. So being connected, being present, and being attuned. Traumatized parenting is that inability to connect, the inability to be fully present and attuned with your kids. So let's go back to what we learned about that part of the brain that measures time. It's either pulling you back to when this event happened, this awful thing in your life, so it always feels like you're not there, or pushing you forward to what could happen. So we're never fully attuned and present with our kids, and our kids require that. So there's lack of contact, particularly in early life. Early life, here's a big statement. Are you ready? The first environment is the most critical environment. I'm gonna drink some tea for saying that. Hold on. The first environment is the most critical environment. What does that mean? When that baby is born, when your child was born, when your grandchild was born, they're looking around to see, all right, I was just in this perfectly warm place with the perfect temperature and fed constantly. That was awesome. Now I'm here. What is this about? And that first environment is teaching the brain what this is about. And so that's when we as parents or grandparents, we dive in. And we particularly that first year, we want them to know this is how it is and be good and strong for them. So if these markers aren't being met, the body gets into a state of overwhelm. And it can even be prenatally. There are things that can happen in the womb where the child can be born stressed out, or even with PTSD. Smaller head per circumference. Remember, I've shared this with you. Smaller head per circumference, smaller limbs, lower IQ. So they could be born with this chronic stress, this PTSD, and then the next 9 months have to be the fourth trimester. It's got to be the quadmester, because the body needs time to adjust, to rebound from that. And so there's got to be calm and caring and things like this. Otherwise, their body gets wired for survival, and it feels like overwhelm within them. And I work with a lot of kids in my practice. I do my telepsych stuff, and I've shared this, guys, with you. So many of the kids that come in where the parents say, "Can you diagnose them with ADHD?" And I always say, well, let's hold on, because I'm not just down with throwing pills at people. I don't want our wellness to be about chemistry. So I'll say, hold on, I want to know what the environment is like. And one of the questions I ask is, were they delayed in speech? And probably, I would even say 99% of the kids that come in, the parents say, yes, they were delayed in speech. That just tells me that this stress thing has been happening for a long time, because speech lives up here in this part of the brain and stress lives back here. So there's a disconnect happening somewhere. So it feels like overwhelm. And if it's lit at an early age, then, and there isn't the nurturing at home, they develop to just try to feel better, to alleviate overwhelm. And many can be functional and happy. The healthy, the ways to alleviate overwhelm is exercise or play or laughter, things like that. But some things can be unhealthy. Maybe they start hitting, or they constrict, or they tighten up, or they shut down, or they create chaos at school. Those are some unhealthy ways that they're trying to alleviate. So today, I want to, a little bit later, want to dive into the vagus nerve, which I am down with the vagus nerve. But we're not going to finish the vagus nerve today. So I want to take the I say that because I want to take the pressure off of me to try to get it done. But if you guys remember Schachter's work, where we get information from the body, and then it comes up here, and then the thalamus says, well, we got this information, we're not sure what to do with it. And if we've had a lot of chaos in our life, what it automatically does, it goes to the stress parts of our brain, which Van der Kolk calls the smoke alarm. It goes to the smoke alarm instead of the watchtower, the logic parts of the brain. And the smoke alarm says, run, fight, freeze, run, fight, let's get out of here. So what happens is we get this information from the body, and then it gets labeled. We get the information from the body, then it gets labeled. All sorts of research supports all this stuff. None of the research says, well, you think about it first, and then this happens. It's this, then this, and it can happen within a millisecond, but it's this, then this, then this. So what we want to start doing is parking on the information that we get last time. Remember last time we did toe to head, where we kind of got to know the body a little bit better? That's what we were doing. We're taking this information, and instead of labeling it as anger or fear or anxiety or stress, we just said, my heart's beating faster, and just sat with it, even breathed it down. That's combining a bunch of different work just in that moment. We're combining the information that the vagus nerve is giving us, Schachter's work of getting information from the body, and then somatic experiencing, Peter Levine's work, and sitting with that information instead of labeling the information. Part of the healing is leaning into that information, getting to know it a little bit better. Practice all the time. Practice all the time. Practice when you're driving home today. Maybe the road does that and get a little slick. You do that. That's information. Your body says, I got something for you right here. I just went and ate a little bit ago. My stomach said, dude, that tiny cup of cereal you had at 7 this morning ain't getting her done anymore. And it gave me information. And I said, I'm labeling that hunger. I didn't label it fear or anger or anything like that. I labeled it hunger. And so I went and got some more food. That's this information, and then doing something about the information. Whew. Let's keep going. So the physical sensations of trauma continue to activate a fear response. So let's look at what we call the physical sensations of trauma. That we've given the word trauma. So maybe heart's beating fast, I'm hot, I'm tingly, I'm tight, I'm tense, I can't breathe, I'm constricted. So those are physical sensations, and we label it trauma. You with me there? So then having labeled that, I associate fear with that. So these physical sensations activate a fear response. And that fear response then activates the fight, flight, or freeze. And so it becomes this loop. And we get stuck in this loop. So you want to do is stop that loop and do nothing for a second before you label it. Don't label it yet. Don't label it yet. Just hang with it. And the more you can practice this, practice it all the time. I practice it when I'm driving. I practice when I'm sitting here. Sometimes when I'm home, I'll be sitting in my Archie Bunker chair. Dang, that is an old school reference. But if you can hang with that reference, we're down, man. You know that. So I got my TV over there. I got an Archie Bunker chair. So sometimes I'll be sitting there, and I'll just kind of hang for a second, and maybe my hands will tingle. And I'll think, that's interesting. I wonder why my hands are tingling. Let me just hang with that. Remember our information is that a sensation that is attended to changes. It's a temporary state. It's just that with stress or trauma or fear, we believe it's permanent. It feels permanent. So hanging with it, and then whatever information your body gives without labeling it. So I just called my hands tingly. Or if my legs needed to move, my legs were tight or tingly. But maybe there was some, maybe if I wanted to, I could have immediately called that some sort of stress, but I didn't. I just wanted to hang with it, and then it goes away. So what happens is the sympathetic kicks in, gets information from the body and says, do we need to run? Do we need to fight? But instead of reacting to it, forcing this vicious loop, we stop for a second, and the parasympathetic part of the brain kicks in and says, dude, chilito. And that comes back. That's a sovereign moment. Man, I'm all about the sovereign moments. We build on that. We recognize that I just had control over my body right now. I didn't go with it. I had control over it right now. And we do the same things when we're tired. Are you guys grouchy when you're tired? You get more fights with your honeys or your kids when you're tired? That's this thing right here. But you just go with it. So you create chaos and fights. Don't do that. Do nothing. Let's keep going. So when you're in this cycle, the mind and the body persist in behaving as if the trauma continues to occur or keeps happening again and again and again. So a key in developing this cycle involves updating the mind to recognize that the trauma is over and the event lies in the past. Come on. The trauma is over, updating the mind. This isn't just, let me just try to talk myself into thinking it's over. That's not that. The hippocampus, do you remember the hippocampus, our buddy? Right in here, in the middle of the brain, stores long-term memory. Hippocampal failure, it doesn't, and for an event to be a memory, it has to have ended. So it starts, there's a middle, and there's no end. So the hippocampus is called hippocampal failure. It just believes the event is occurring over and over and over again. So part of what we do is update it. We update it. It's not happening right now. It's not being remembered. Do you remember that? It's not being remembered. It's being relived, but it's not occurring right now. So that's when we start looking around the environment. I'm here in this room. And we do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We use all my senses to recognize that I'm here in this room. Let me update the hippocampus right now. It's not occurring. It may feel like it, but it's not. And if you have somebody that you're in the room with, you can say, I'm starting to feel it. Have them say, it's not happening now. And have them walk you through 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathe it down. Have a sovereign moment with your body. Reclaim it. Reclaim it. Sovereignty. Come on now. But it's got to be done. We have to recognize that we're safe and that the event is not occurring anymore, that this moment is safe. But until we are safe, we're having trouble with expression. Language is limited. Our experience is limited because either we're being pushed back, pulled back, or pushed forward, and our sensory input just kind of shrinks. So we want to expand, expand, expand. We have trouble learning. We have trouble with social engagement until we are safe. And that led me up to the doorstep of the vagus nerve. Porges, the guy's name is Porges polyvagal. I think, if I recall, he was at the University of Chicago, and then he, I think he's since moved. I'm trying to think where my textbook is. It was in my office, but it might be on my nightstand because I nerd out before I go to bed, so I'll read a nerd text, thinking hopefully my wife likes nerds. So the vagus nerve responds to safety. So it's the longest of the 12 cranial nerves, and it's the second longest nerve system in the body, behind the spinal column. So it does kind of this and here, like that, and then one goes here, and one kind of goes through all the major organs in the body and ends up in the pit of the stomach. And it's behaving on your behalf. It's taking all sorts of information. Let me just pause for a second. I'm always perpetually amazed at how we are put together and how our bodies are a system. That food affects my mental health. My mental health affects my stomach. The information my body gives me affects my dopamine levels in my brain. This whole system, it just blows me away. You heard people say, take care of your teeth, it'll lead to heart disease, or you'll lead to heart disease. Like, what? Somehow there's a connection there. So your body's this system. And that's where it changed my work as a psychologist, because as a psychologist, I'm trained on the mind. But I'm missing out on a lot of stuff if I focus on the one thing. There are many things that feed that, and it feeds many things. So we have to understand the body as a system, and how trauma and overwhelm, or maybe the season of COVID, has affected the proper functioning of this system. And when it's not functioning properly, it looks like anger, ADHD, oppositional defiance, depression, anxiety, can't sleep, PTSD. It looks like so many things when the system is not working the way that it should be on my behalf. There you go. I don't know if I've ever said that before. So Annie, can you send me the notes to this? I believe it though. So let's dive into the polyvagal. So self-regulation is often a defining feature of success in new situations. Pause. Self-regulation is often a defining feature of success in novel situations. Let's just park on that for a second. So part of what trauma looks like is the inability to self-regulate. So if I can't self-regulate, I can't sit still. I can't think straight. So I drink, I smoke, I hit, I use. I'm having trouble with my self-regulation. And those habits come out of using something outside of me for my internal regulation. But what if I could regulate internally? So a defining feature of taking care of yourself in a new situation is the ability to have a calm presence. And when I just don't want to use the word calm. Let's make that a functional definition. My heart's beating slower. My breathing is deeper. Maybe I feel a sense of cool. My muscles are loose. And if you notice how I phrase those things, I didn't phrase it as a lack of. I phrased it as the presence of feeling cooler, the presence of my heart beating slow. As I've shared with you before, too often we are calling peace lack of symptoms. But I'd rather call peace, peace. My heart's beating slow. Not, my heart's not beating fast right now. Or my breathing is deep. I'm not breathing fast right now. Those sound very different. So we want to call peace the presence of these good things, not the lack of these things. Just make that a habit. So self-regulation is the presence of these things and claiming the presence and even creating the presence of these things and then owning them. That's self-regulation. But novel situations, so novelty, anything new or different or unfamiliar is called a novel situation. So I have this presence that we create the sovereignty, and this new thing comes in. We don't have to give up this piece just because this is different. Oh, that sounds good. Let's say it again. We don't have to give up this piece just because this is different. We make this match this instead of this coming to chaos to come to this. We make this guy come to here. That's sovereignty. So a defining feature of success in this situation is the ability to do that. Part of it may be recognizing, oh, my heart's beating a little bit faster. Let me reclaim it. Let me own it again. Let me create my peace again. What polyvagal work does, it treats self-regulation as not a learned skill that you learn that you think through, but self-regulation skills are a product of the nervous system. So it can maintain feeling of safety in the absence of receiving cues of safety. This new thing, this new person, I'm not getting cues of safety from this brand new person, but I have it internally. So regardless of what environment is, I have peace. Come on. Come on. Okay. Sorry, I kind of told you where it goes. So the vagus nerve, this is Huffman's work. The vagus nerve is a long meandering bundle of motor and sensory fibers that link the brain stem to the heart, lungs, and gut. It branches out to touch, interact, listen to this, the liver, the spleen, the gallbladder, the ureter, female fertility organs, the neck, the ears, the tongue, the kidneys. It powers up your involuntary nerve center, the parasympathetic nervous system, remember the part that calms us down and helps with digestion, and controls unconscious body functions, things that you're not even doing right now purposefully, as well as everything from keeping your heart rate constant and food digestion to breathing and sweating. Come on. It helps regulate blood pressure, blood glucose, kidney function, bile and testosterone, spits. It controls the releasing of tears, for crying out loud. So what I'm saying is we have to get to know the vagus nerve. Once we make that guy work the way it should work, that it's working on our behalf in good ways, look at everything I just listed that is connected to. Otherwise, your body's living in chaos, in stress. So the vagus nerve has fibers that go through pretty much every one of our internal organs. So the management and process of emotions happens through the vagal nerve between the heart, the brain, and the gut, which is why we have a strong gut reaction to intense mental and emotional states. What does that mean? The management and processing of emotions happens through the vagal nerve between the heart, the brain, and the gut. You ever have a gut feeling about something? I think I've asked you guys this before, but I'll ask it again. You have a gut feeling about something? And you think, that guy's all somehow. I don't know if I want to go snagging with him. He's all somehow. You kind of got a gut feeling about something. I don't want to go in there. I don't want to go there. Why not? I don't know. I just have a gut feeling about it. What is that about? Do you have superpowers? Actually, the vagus nerve works for your behalf in that way. It's almost like a superpower. Because if you're brought along well, if you were nurtured, there's that word again. If you were nurtured, the vagus nerve kind of scans and says, no, this doesn't fit in to what I understand as safety. It doesn't fit this. So if there's safety in the home, if you're brought along, if you were watched out for, not necessarily sheltered, but taught to know the difference. If the vagus nerve picks up on something, no, then it kind of pulls you from it. But if we've had a lot of chaos in our life, it has trouble discerning, because everything feels chaotic. Did I ever tell this group about when I went and got ice cream when I went camping with Grace? Did I tell you that story, Annie? I think I did. I've been doing so.
Yep.
Okay, so remember when we were getting ice cream, Gracie said, I don't want to sit with you guys because that guy makes me feel uncomfortable. That was her vagus nerve informing her. So that's why raising our kids well and good, in good ways, they learn that, we teach them, and you know what? Then you affect your grandkids and great grandkids. It reverberates generationally. I keep saying that, and I'm totally down with that statement. Vagus nerve dysfunction can result, listen to this problem, that if our vagus nerve doesn't have a sense of peace or calm, or is not working in good ways for us, obesity, bradycardia, abnormally slow heart rate, can be a symptom of vagus nerve dysfunction. Poor, and the word they use is poor vagal tone. But if for some reason you have abnormally slow heartbeat, That's a vagus, that could be a vagus nerve thing. Difficulty swallowing, gastrointestinal diseases, fainting, mood disorders, B12 deficiency, chronic inflammation, impaired cough, and seizures. And that's Dr. Kramer's work. So vagus nerve stimulation, making this guy work on our behalf. And we'll have enough time to go through some of the tools for vagus to make this thing start working for us. Vagus nerve stimulation, listen to this. This is Kramer's work again, has been shown to improve conditions such as heart disease, anxiety, tinnitus or tinnitus, the ringing in your ears, obesity, alcohol addiction, migraines, Alzheimer's disease, leaky gut, poor blood circulation, mood disorders, and cancers. Vagus nerve stimulation has been shown to improve these conditions. We need to get to know this guy. So listen to this. So what it does, it takes the information from our body and tells our brain, well, here's what I got going on down south here. Here's what the body's giving me. Here's the information. So again, remember, it's the longest of the 12 cranial nerves. About 80% of his nerve fibers, or 4 of the 5 lanes, get information from the body to the brain. It is there to get information from the body to the brain. If you go way, 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 way back 6 weeks, let's do 5 weeks. We talked about the body bears the burden. Any good trauma work, it begins with somatic work, the bottom up. 80% get information from the body to the brain. The 5th lane runs from the brain to the body, shuttling signals from the brain to the body. Each of these roads, each of these lanes is composed of tens of thousands of nerve fibers that branch into all of our body system to get that information. Vagus nerve damage can be caused by diabetes, alcoholism, upper respiratory viral infections. Stress can inflame the nerve, along with fatigue or anxiety, or even something as simple as bad posture can negatively impact the vagus nerve. Did you guys just sit up? Even something as simple as bad posture can affect the vagus nerve, because it's doing this. If I'm doing this, it's affecting that. And when my kids and I are walking down the road, I'll make sure I'll put my hand on like their sternum here, and I'll twist their lower back to make sure they have good posture. Plus, that helps when they go out into the world. If you read, I don't know what book is that. Simple, Stronger Posture. People perceive them differently. As more confident, taking up more space, and respect them differently, and less bullying, like a simple adjustment in posture. So when we're walking down the road, let's give them a little bit of that. I tell them to take up their space. I tell them, God gave us this much space in the world. What are you going to do with it today? And so as I'm dropping my daughter off at school, I say, Gracie, be sure to take up your space today. And she'll do this. And then she walks toward the school like this, which that ain't helping things. Okay. Diet plays a role in the vagus nerve. What? Yeah, I didn't like this research. An obesogenic diet. That's what they call that kind of a diet. High fat, high carb, junk food diet reduces the sensitivity of the vagus nerve. So when I probably heard the first about this, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, where people said, if you just eat healthy, it'll affect your trauma. And I was like, shut up. Come to find out I was wrong. I could admit to you I was wrong. Because it affects the vagal tone, vagal function, which is going to give that information to the brain. It's going to create less dopamine. It's going to create less endorphins. So the brain's not working on our behalf. So we are more stressed. We are more depressed. We are more angry. So simple, creating a better health. I think I have a slide on some of the better health things. Simple, eating a little bit better, can change things for us. Oh my goodness. If you look back over time, sleep, eating, breathing, nutrition, activity, we made trauma work a lot harder than it needs to be. We got to help the body help us out. Help the body help us out. Let's get to know it better, get it to understand, leaning into it better. Okay. So the enteric system, E-N-T-E-R-I-C, which governs the function of the gastrointestinal tract, communicates with the central nervous system, the brain, and the vagus nerve. And this is known as the gut-brain axis. Geez. The enteric nervous system is sometimes referred to as the second brain because it gets all this information, and it and the brain function intimately together. The gut-brain axis. So we know that the gut-brain axis is not just capable of taking care of itself, but also influences the brain. In fact, about 90% of the signals passing along the vagus nerve come not from above, but from the gut-brain axis. Taking care of our body, taking care of ourselves, trauma-proofing ourselves, becoming stress-hardy. Come on now. Come on. And when you think about it, go back to, I was doing a class like this with my friends up in Canada, and it really, their nutrition boiled down to the things they grew, the game they shot out of the sky or hunted, beaver, moose, deer, and the water they drank. So when you pare it down, the people who talk about a traditional diet are actually exactly right on. Lean meats, buffalo, deer, rabbit, lean meats, and then the things we grow from the ground. Those things help the ENS, the gut-brain axis, which helps with so many things. So when you go to a talk about food sovereignty, this is what they're talking about. This plays right into our sweet spot and reclaiming that in our community. And plus, it's a sovereign way for us to be in our communities. I love that. This is from the National Center for Biotechnology Information. Keeping the gut and vagus nerve gateway healthy impacts our mental health. And this is what I was just talking about. Keeping the gut and vagus nerve gateway healthy impacts our mental health. A recent study shows how antibiotics can make us aggressive when they upset the microbiome balance in our gut. An important study, how many years ago? Probably 3-4 years ago now, by McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, found that certain beneficial gut microbes can actually prevent PTSD. Probiotics can help keep the gut and vagus nerve signals in a healthier state. That's unbelievable. That's from the National Center for Biotechnology Information. That's unbelievable. So we'll just do a few tools today, and then next Tuesday, we'll pick up on some more tools to help. And I hope that I've got you leaning into the importance of knowing the vagus nerve. I think that is the next horizon. There's a book. I mean, if this is something that you think, God, I wish I knew more of this stuff. There's a book called The Pocket Guide for Polyvagal Theory. A Pocket Guide for Polyvagal Theory by Stephen Porges, S-T-E-P-H-E-N, Porges, P-O-R-G-E-S. And I think that work in engaging the vagus nerve is the foundation for what we can understand is engaging cultural activities, cultural behaviors in addressing trauma. Because we already talked about food. We already talked about nutrition and how those things affect probiotic and brain function and vagal tone. Things that we can grow, which we've done traditionally. Things that you can hunt, which you've done traditionally, the lean meats, the buffalo and things like that, the buffalo, the deer, the rabbit. There in Rosebud, all those gas stations sell those little pizzas there, which I love them. But if that's the staple of my diet, that is an obesogenic diet, which is going to have the exact opposite effect. That's not the eating that we were designed to do. So this is actually practicing a cultural behavior and helping our communities not just deal, but helping the body start healing from trauma. Come on now. Come on. All right. Let me come down to here because I want to see if I can have this, my little menu here. Let's just make life easier, because some things on that menu, folks on my res ain't never going to eat, including me. But there's things that we can eat, like I just listed. More nuts, more legumes, more things that we can grow, and lean meats are gonna help our body start to recover. Just let's make it that simple. Let's not make brain surgery out of it. Okay. So let's do just a couple tools, and then we'll pick up with tools next week. Let's do this one. This is one of my favorite ones. Let's move this down here because I don't want to miss out on anything. Cold. Since it is February 2nd in South Dakota, cold exposure, such as cold showers or face dunking, stimulates the vagus nerve. Remember, and that's what we want, vagal stimulation. We want to increase vagal tone. So we want the vagus nerve working for us. So we want vagal stimulation. Cold exposure, such as cold showers or face dunking, stimulates the nerve. So I'll tell you a secret, since I've known you guys for 6 weeks now. I'll tell you all my deepest, darkest secrets. I put my shower, for the last half of my shower, they are cold. And you can tell, if you're in my house, you can tell because I start screaming like a little girl. I'll make it call like, like that. My whole family knows when I go cold. And then I'll let it, but it's only cold for a second until I lose feeling. What I have right here in my chest. Here, I was kind of standing there for a second. And you've probably heard that if your car ever goes into a lake during the wintertime, the initial shock is what kills most people. So kind of waiting for the cold and not just being with it for a second, and then you can't feel it as much. And so I'll have a cold shower probably for about 4 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, and then I'll kind of get it all over my body again. That actually helps with my vagal tone, helps with my vagal nerve. It can help with mental alertness. It can help with weight loss. But don't, like I started out, when I first started out, I just did kind of hot shower to not as hot. That was my cold shower. And then a little bit more, then a little more, then down here, then I did it for just 10 seconds and then 30 seconds. Then now I'm up to about half my shower. Studies show that when your body adjusts to cold, your sympathetic system shuts down. The excited part, the fight or flight response declines, and your rest and digest, the parasympathetic, sympathetic, parasympathetic system increases. And that's controlled by the vagus nerve. Any kind of acute cold exposure, including drinking ice cold water, will increase the vagus nerve activation. So you've probably seen in movies where people, when they're freaking out or something, they go to the sink and they turn on the cold water, and that's actually a thing. That's a thing when you put your face in cold water. So what I have schools do is I'll ask them to just get a damp rag, then wring it out really good, and put it in the freezer. Put a few of those in the freezer. And so if a student comes in activated, having a stress or trauma response, rather than try to talk, take that thing out of the freezer and put it on their face. They got to hold their breath 5 seconds. Because we're replacing putting their face underwater. So we want to hold their breath. They do this. When they do it like 3 times, you'll be shocked at how quickly their body responds to it. Comes back. Their parasympathetic kicks in. And I've done that with my kids, and it works. When I work with folks on telepsych, sometimes I'll have them have things prepared, because if I know that they have a quick hair trigger for those type of responses, I make sure that they have something like that nearby so they can just put their face on it. Ideally, what with, like I said, face dunking, which if you work at a school, this is a whole different signature you have to get from the parents. So maybe that's why I recommend just the washcloth or something. But my daughter, I've had her just dip her face underwater, and it took 3 dunks, and she was back to normal again. So exposure to cold. Another one. I'll do this one for us, and then we'll finish. Laughter. Let me move this up here. Laughter. Excuse me. Happiness and laughter are natural immune boosters. Laughter also stimulates the vagus nerve. Research shows how laughter increases heart rate variability in a group environment. So there's a yoga move called the laughing technique. And let's break this thing down a little bit more. So you remember heart rate variability? That our heartbeats are kind of different every beat, but the stressed person or the person who has a lot of chaos or maybe traumas, there's not variability. It's kind of one tempo all the time. So creating heart rate variability where there's changes in that is so good for the body, so good for the brain, is so good for preventing disease. And so we want heart rate variability. Come to find out, laughter creates heart rate variability. And that's what I love. One of the things I love about our community, the Native community, is we'll find ways to laugh about anything. It's one of our go-to tools. And you know what I'm talking about when you're sitting at your dinner with all your relatives and you finish eating like at 7, but you guys are still sitting at the table at 10:30 because you want to leave because everybody's laughing, which pretty much leads to a second meal. So we want to create laughter, enjoy laughter, and next time you laugh, just feel how good it feels to laugh hard. Just see what the experience is of laughing hard and enjoy that experience of laughing hard. But one of the things that, let's just try it here. If we were in a big group, this would go much better. This would go much better. Maybe someday we'll get to be in a big group together. But everyone close your eyes for a second. Just engage. Just engage. This is a good spot. We're all safe here. So close your eyes for a second. And I want you to imagine the last time you just cracked up. Imagine the last time you just, you're almost embarrassed because you were laughing so hard. You're looking around the room and people were just kind of looking at you for laughing so hard, or maybe you with your friends and all of you were just busting a gut. Picture that. Picture the detail of that. What would it like? What happened? What were you doing? If we were all in a room together, probably a couple of you would start giggling, and then the person next to you would, and pretty soon the whole room would be laughing. And a room full of laughter is actually so healing. It creates heart rate variability, which affects vagal tone. So the homework, hey, this is the first time I'm giving you homework. The homework is recognize and enjoy yourself laughing this week. Because when you're doing that, you are literally healing parts of your body, which is pretty awesome. What an awesome way to heal.